During the making of our disused stations of the CA&E Railway series, we reached out to many organizations seeking permission to use old photographs. One of the organizations we contacted was the Valley Model Railroad Association, which is the current occupant of the Clintonville Station, along the Elgin Branch of the Illinois Prairie Path. They happily obliged, and in the conversation that followed, it became apparent that although they knew a great deal about the Clintonville Station, they were keen to learn even more. They invited us to work with them in this endeavor, and to facilitate this, they kindly granted us full access to their Clintonville residence.
Over the course of the subsequent few months in the autumn of 2020, we made multiple trips to the Clintonville Station, which today stands defiantly against advancing suburbia, amidst cornfields along Kenyon Road, about 0.2 of a mile west of Route 25 in South Elgin, Illinois. And full disclosure about these visits, we drove to the site instead of cycling.
Most people in the Chicagoland area have likely never heard of Clintonville, which sounds a little like one of the stops from the long-ago TV show Petticoat Junction. Clintonville was a small village founded in the 1830s by New York immigrant DeWitt Clinton, located just along the east banks of the Fox River, a few miles south of Elgin. In 1907, Clintonville was renamed to South Elgin and has continued with that name to this day. But when the Aurora, Elgin, and Chicago Railroad was launched in 1902, this town and the station were known as Clintonville, and the station name stuck from that time forward.
The Clintonville Station, as you may recall from our Elgin Branch video, was a passenger station, and more importantly, it was one of the 6 original electric power substations of the Aurora, Elgin, and Chicago Railway, built in the 1902 timeframe. The Aurora substation on Hanks Avenue was substation number 1. Warrenville was substation number 2. Lombard at Main Street was substation number 3. Maywood at Fifth Avenue was substation number 4. Angleton, or later Prince Crossing, was substation number 5, and Clintonville, our present subject, was known as substation number 6. 26,000 volts of alternating current was generated by coal-fired steam engines at the CA&E powerhouse in Batavia, Illinois, and transmitted overland to the 6 substations, each of which would then transform and step down that voltage to 600 volts direct current, which would then be used to energize the third rails and trolley wires of the railway. Electric motors on the train cars would use that 600 volts to power the train swiftly along the trackway.
At present, only the Prince Crossing and Clintonville substations have been preserved, as the other 4 substations have long since been torn down. And of these 2 remaining structures, only the Clintonville station has remained essentially true to the original architectural footprint of the substation, as the Prince Crossing station, although still a grand old building itself, has had at least a few modifications and alterations from the original design since its inception in 1902.
And so the Clintonville Station building is important, not so much from an architectural point of view, although it does have some interesting features, but from the fact that it is one of the last of its kind in northeast Illinois, which once boasted dozens of such buildings and structures. And these were buildings which played a vital role in providing transportation across the region, bridging cities and towns, and seeding and developing suburbs all along the railway route. So we thought it was important to take a closer look and a deeper dive into the history of this former station. And besides that, the Clintonville Station has been one of our favorite stops on our bicycle trips along the Elgin route of the Illinois Prairie Path, a bucolic and shady picnic spot in a semi-rural setting, and where you can get a real tangible sense of the old railway.
This is going to be something of an industrial archaeology series, as we'll attempt to flesh out the history and function of the Clintonville substation, reverse engineering how the building worked, and teasing out the story of the structure, not by digging, but by closely examining its many features and remaining scars, as well as by poring through old trade literature.
In this introductory video in the series, we'll take a complete tour of the Clintonville Station, from the main floor where all the model railroading happens today, to the basement catacombs beneath, to the dark and dusty cupola above, as well as circumnavigating its brick exterior and climbing over its rooftop.
The primary sources for this Clintonville series include 1. Electric railway trade journals from the first part of the 20th century, such as the Street Railway Journal, the Electric Traction Weekly, and the Electric Railway Journal. 2. The Julie Johnson Historical Collection, a rich trove of information related to the Chicago, Aurora, and Elgin Railway at www.caerr.com. And 3. Newspaper articles from the early part of the 20th century.
On our first trip to Clintonville, Joe Montilla, the current president of the Valley Model Railroad Association, and Bob Opel, the vice president and one of the more venerable members, walked us through the old station.
You enter the building from a doorway on its west facade. The main floor is a paradise for model railroaders, with a variety of vintage layouts extending wall to wall and on multiple levels, in a well-lit space that's about 55 feet by 30 feet in dimension.
Even their dog looks like it came from Petticoat Junction.
In addition, the club could not ask for a more historic setting, relative to railways, as everywhere you look, you see reminders of railway history and hints of the former function of this fossilized structure. The color scheme painted on the walls matches the final Chicago, Aurora, and Elgin Railway color scheme, bluish gray and red. A small cinder block room in the southeast corner of the building serves as a kitchenette. The club often uses it to supply snacks and drinks so that model railroading action can continue unabated.
A wooden staircase along the east face of the main floor takes us to the basement below.
The internal walls undoubtedly helped to support the concrete floor above, which in turn supported some heavyweight electrical machinery.
The basement consists of many narrow hallways, twisting and turning in maze-like fashion, all part of the original building design. Bob Opel explains some of the details as we go.
The internal basement partitions have many holes in them, most by design, suggesting trackways for electrical conduit and wiring.
Note that the basement walls are made of common brick, 3 or 4 courses thick, extending down to the footings, a bit unusual by today's standards. Although there is no arguing with the results, as the building has stood in fairly good shape for almost 120 years. You wonder whether you should be leaving a trail of popcorn or something so as to find your way back out. But then again, the dog would likely eat it anyway.
It's not entirely clear what function all of these brick and concrete structures perform for the substation. That's something we hope to work out, at least partially. Both the basement ceiling and the main floor above are made of concrete, as the main floor originally housed electrical machinery, which we'll learn about in subsequent episodes. The basement ceiling originally had multiple large openings to the floor above, more clues to its former use.
Next, Joe is taking us up to the building's cupola, as they refer to it. But there's no easy way to get up there. A small scuttle hole in the ceiling along the west face of the building is the only opening, and the only way up. And that's via a small restrictive platform over the rear doorway. We'll have to use a second ladder from this confined platform to make the final ascent.
The cupola is a dark and dusty place. There are no lights or electrical outlets in this unused space. The air is filled with floating dust and insulation material. Cobwebs extend from floor to ceiling and from the corners. The floor upon which you walk is wood sheathing, overlaid with thin and very old fiberglass insulation. The ceiling is very old and discolored wood sheathing.
We can see 2 sets of ceramic insulators at the top of the east wall of the cupola, 1 set of 3 in each of the wall's corners, which align with the ceramic insulators facing the former trackway on the outside of the building. There is evidence of there having been a 3rd set of insulators in the middle of the east cupola wall, but the area has been since bricked up.
There are 3 large conduits, or flues, along the west wall, which extend to the floors below. What role they played is as yet a bit of a mystery, although their alignment with the insulators on the east cupola walls suggests some sort of cable run. At some point in the past, part of the flue structure was dismantled, likely when they put in ductwork for heating, leaving big gaps and openings in the flues.
On the east face of the flue, there are the remains of an archaic wooden frame, which apparently played some sort of role related to the flue, but not clear what that was at present. Only one of the flues has an intact frame remaining, although the other two had one at some point as well.
At one time, there were several windows in this cupola on each of the cupola's faces, but they have all since been bricked up. For most of the windows and openings, the windows were wholly removed and the openings were completely rebricked. One window opening in the west wall of the cupola has been bricked up, and in its place, an opening for 3 insulators, or pipes, has been installed, suggesting high voltage circuitry once passed to the west of the building as well. You can also see that on each of the ends of the cupola, facing north and south, they simply bricked over the entire window, the walls being double thickness of brick, leaving the former window, the interior trim, and the sash entirely intact and entombed in the brickwork. It's something of a time capsule.
Outside, back in the fresh air, we walked all around the building perimeter, noting all of the bricked up doorways, openings, and windows, as well as the various pipes and insulators projecting out of the back of the building facing west. We'll have to try to sort out what was original from what was added or modified later.
Up on the roof, we got a much closer look at the electrical ceramic insulators projecting out of the east face of the cupola, in addition to the bricked up windows.
Joe points out the heavy metalwork on the roof of the southwest corner of the building. That metalwork is something of a mystery, and unique to the Clintonville Substation, as you don't see that on the old photos of the other substations. The size of the metalwork suggests it was supporting something fairly heavy.
The cupola roof, which is about 25 feet up, offers a nice view of the surrounding area. In subsequent visits, we fought the blast of chill November winds, working with Joe to take exterior measurements of the entire building and all of its many design details, clambering over the main roof and cupola rooftops in our quest to do so. Thankfully, Joe and the other club members had already carefully measured the interior spaces of the building and provided those measurements to us. We'll need all of these measurements if we hope to reconstruct the building as it was 100 or more years ago.
During our multiple visits, we also took a few minutes to talk with Joe Montilla about the organization that was playing host to our many visits, the Valley Model Railroad Association.
Hi, we're here today at the Valley Model Railroad Association building in South Elgin, and we're here with Joe Montilla, the president, correct?
Yes.
President of the association. You want to just tell us a little bit about your organization and about the organization's history with the building?
We're an HO scale train club. We've been here for about 67 years. The whole goal of the association is to basically have a layout where people can come and run trains. A lot of people like to have toy trains, HO scale trains. It used to be a lot more common, so this is a little bit rare now, where we actually have a building where we can come together, build a larger layout, and everybody can either bring their trains or we have club trains. The whole idea is to be able to run scale model trains and have fun. And that's what we do here, is we have fun, and that's why the other thing that we've been doing recently is we have a lot of younger members. So we have kids as young as 8 that come here on a regular basis and run trains.
How many members do you have?
So the official number is runs in the mid-50s. Some of that is that we have people that have been members for 40 years, and that we keep them on as kind of honorary members. As far as active members, we're somewhere right around the upper 30s. So the people that actually come to this building this year that are members, paying members, is probably 30-something.
And you're in this wonderful historic building here behind us.
Yeah, the old Clintonville Station, has been out here almost 120 years. We still have the receipt. We moved here in 1953. The club started in Elgin. And unfortunately, like a lot of other things, all the old records are gone. We don't know who did it or why they did it. We just know that we had the first receipt on the wall, and we moved in here in 1953.
When it was still a station, not pretty.
So the line was still here. The trains were still running. They had the waiting area inside, and we had an original layout. And unfortunately, there's no photos of exactly what it looked like, but we did have a layout here in the building at that time. And then the layout was rebuilt after that to take up most of the floor space when the passenger station was no longer there. Mm-hmm. And that layout was there until 2000. The big thing that happened in 99-2000 was we had roof damage. Little microbursts, what they called it, damaged it. While doing all those repairs, they decided to replace the layout. So the current layout that we have was built right around 2000.
Yeah, I remember that microburst.
I think it hit Wheaton too.
Yeah, it hit our street.
So Joe, if somebody was interested in joining the organization, how would they go about it?
They're always welcome to come out and visit us here at the clubhouse. We're in South Elgin on Kenyon Road. You can look for us on Google. Kenyon Road is a little short road here, right next to Kenyon Farm. We're out here most Fridays and most Sundays, or they can go online. Our website is VMRR, ValleyModelRailroad.org. And there's information under our About Us section, and it's about how to join. We have the paperwork online. You can submit it by email, or you can, once again, print it out and stop by. Most of the people actually stop by and see the place and visit with us, and then, I'd like to join. How do I join? So that's how we get most people.
And you can't miss the building as you come along Kenyon Road here. It sticks out.
Yeah, we're
in a good way. There's cornfields around here. So.
In a good way, yeah.
Or other fields.
So we're the brick road on Kenyon Road, and also, not to get confused, right at the intersection of 25 and Kenyon Road is the church, which looks similar. I mean, they're small brick buildings. Other than that, there's not much out here. It's cornfields and cows and us.
But it's a nice place to stop when you're going along the Illinois Prairie Path.
Very nice.
So.
Yeah, anytime, and just so anybody knows, anytime we're open, this is a public building. So the building is on Forest Preserve land. Kane County Forest Preserve. So the building is owned by the Forest Preserve, and we maintain it. So we 100% maintain any of the utilities, the upkeep, and we had to replace the roof. We maintain it 100%. The parking lot, we maintain it, but it is Kane County Forest Preserve land.
Well, thanks very much, and thanks very much for having us.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thanks
for stopping by.
And their link will be down below.
Oh, appreciate it.
Exactly.
In the next episode, we'll take a deeper dive into the history and function of this venerable old building, and learn what role the Clintonville Substation played in electric power distribution, not only for the CA&E Railway, but for the Fox Valley area as well.